Hey guys, so I was making some videos and then realized I had absolutely no audio. So I'm going to talk you through real quick how you would create a character from the basic shape of a cube. So we're just going to watch and I will hopefully be able to give a voiceover that can help with this video. So what we're doing right now is we're just looking around the cube, getting an idea for what we have to work with. The transform panel is something you may want to add to your Blender roster of techniques and things to use. It has info on location, rotation, scale, dimensions, and a couple of other things you might be interested in. Right now I'm just demonstrating that you can move an object by typing a number rather than dragging it to the correct place. By editing its location, you could also rotate or scale it similarly. So this cube would not be good for a human body because the cube is the same distance all the way around. So what we're going to do is we're going to scale it down in just one direction. So you want to hit S and then hit X. Now that we've scaled it to more of a reasonable width for a person's body, we can work with it. We're going to add a couple of rings. To do that, you need to go into edit mode. To add a ring, you have to press Control R. You want to add one ring in each direction, and then the ring that's going through the center horizontally, let's scale that one down a little bit. We're starting to form the torso as we speak. You can Alt right click to select a ring rather than selecting an individual vertex or edge. The ring in the middle, let's scale that one up just a little bit, not too much. We'll add two more rings facing vertically and one more horizontally at the bottom. Now what we're going to do is we're going to select the faces along the bottom of this torso, and we're going to size everything down just a little bit because we really want the top of the torso to be more human-like. The top of the torso should be a little bit bigger than the bottom. So just hit S, and to scale it down, we'll move the mouse in. You'll notice every time I scale things up or down, I do move the mouse a little bit away from the selected object. That just makes it easier to control. So now what I want to do is I want to select the middle parts of the top of the torso and just bring those out by hitting S and then X to scale in just the X direction, sorry. What I'm going to do next is I'm actually going to pull this up just as if it was where your shoulders are going. And following that, I want to extrude out a neck region. Now when you bring out the neck, you do need to scale it down just a bit because that's kind of what the neck does on a typical body. And then once you've done that, you can extrude again to start forming the head. Now that doesn't look like a normal head, so we will have to bring out a face. And before we bring out a face, let's just add a ring to kind of give some space in between the head and the neck. It'd be kind of weird if we had no neck. Now when you bring out the head, make sure you extrude. You're not just pulling on the red arrow. Alright, next up, let's add some arms and legs. So I added a ring there because I want my arm to only take up a certain portion of the torso, not the whole place. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to pull out the first part of the arm and then set the size right over here. So the size, let's use a unit of 1. The reason why you have to set the size manually is because you want to make sure that your object is symmetrical, and so you can set it on the other side as well. Let's do that one more time for the second portion of the arm. And you want to get it on the other side. We'll extrude just a little bit more for like the wrist hand region, which we could develop a little bit later. I'm going to give it a length of 0.2. Alright, Next up, let's get some legs on our character. The character is a little bit blocky, so we're probably going to have to round out those arms in a minute. So I'm just hitting E to extrude. This time I'm using unit length of 1.2, slightly longer than arms because many people do have a little bit longer legs. It's not too important that I get the legs to look right when I'm dragging it out, but I do need to make sure that they have the same size when I set the extrude value. Alright, at this point our block character is ready to get some rounding in there. Let's make the arms a little bit more round. Let's make the legs a little bit more round. We want to add rings to round this guy out. So we're actually going to be adding 3 rings going in the horizontal cross section. If you make a mistake like I just did, just press Ctrl Z and then Ctrl R again to add another ring. You want to make sure your rings are centered properly. That will make it easier to round out your object. So I'm going to add 2 more, evenly spaced. If you want, you can do this all at once by just scrolling up when you press Ctrl R before you select anything. Alright, next we will want to add some rings going horizontally as well with those kinds of cross sections. And we're going to bring in the outer edges of our arms. Now when you're bringing in those outer edges, you do want to select edges. We're also going to set up our character for the legs later. But keep in mind, every time you add a ring, it's actually going to affect the number of vertices, the number of edges, and the number of faces, as well as triangles. For a game's main character, it's not unheard of to use about 1 million triangles. However, just keep in mind your computer is doing a lot of processing for that, so it does slow down your game just a little bit if you have a bunch of characters running around with millions of triangles. Alright, time to get to the fun part. We're going to go into edge select mode by pressing Control Tab, and then we're going to select an edge so that we can start modifying it. Now when you select an edge, make sure you use right click and then Control right click to fill in everything between, or Shift right click to select another edge. There are times when you'll want to select multiple edges at once, and that's just because it speeds up your workflow. So I selected the front and back edges. I hit scale and then X for only X axis. Bring the edges in, and I'm going to move it down a little bit just by dragging the blue arrow. I want to move it down until it makes more of a straight line. You'll see what I'm talking about in just a second. Right over here. You want that line to be relatively straight. And then we'll take the next pair of edges, do the exact same thing. So shift click does not fill in between, but if you control right click, it will fill. So I am going to scale down the X direction, bring it down in the Z direction. I'm not entirely happy with the way that my arm looks, but that's possibly because my character is just a little bit too fat. So you will notice there's a lot more rounding going along the top of the arm, so I'm pretty much going to repeat this process for the rest of that arm. Now if something like this happens where one side is shrinking faster than the other, just select it and use the red arrows to bring it out. You can also hit G. G is position, and then hit X to move only in the X direction. So I'm selecting the bottom of the arm now, doing the same thing. Scale it in the X direction, bring it up. Then I'm going to do the same thing with the inner edges on the bottom. Scale in the X direction and then bring it up. Alright, so now that my arm is more round, I actually do want to fix the width of the arm. So what I'm going to do all at once is just select all for the whole character and make the character a little bit less thick. I'll scale the character in the X direction and make it a little bit smaller. So that's one arm. If you wanted to do the same thing to the other side, you totally could. For the purpose of the video, I'm not going to do that. Let's go to the legs. Now we want to make the legs a little bit round as well. When we do this, it's actually going to present a problem, so I want to show you that. Now to do the legs all at once, I'm just going to select all of the correct edges and I'm going to scale them together. When you hit S, you want to press Shift Z. So Shift Z will select the X and Y axes only. It will not let you edit the Z axis. That is what you get when you Shift Z, is the red and green axes only. So I want to make those lines a little bit straighter. I'm going to redo that selection area. And then I'll select the more inner lines and repeat the process. Alright, now by this point you've probably seen what looks a little bit weird. It's where the legs meet. It's just really strange. So what I'm going to do right now is I'm going to go into face select mode. I'm just going to take the leg itself and I will scale it down a bit because this leg is pretty fat. It's a lot wider than, you know, a typical leg might be. It's disproportionately wide for its width. That's a more balanced look on the leg. But take a look at how it connects to the left leg. If we consider that the right leg, how does the right leg connect to the left leg? That looks rather strange. What you could do is, in designing the character, you could put some space there, or we can do a minor fix like we're about to do. So we're actually going to chop off some of these faces by selecting them and then pressing X. When you press X, you can delete. We're going to delete the faces. So now those faces are gone. And we want to delete those two faces as well. And from there, you can then do a little bit of craftsmanship. We're going to add a vertex by using the knife tool. Knife tool is right over here. You got to click on the two places where you want to add vertices and then hit enter. So we'll knife that face and knife the other face as well. Sounds a little bit violent, but we're just adding vertices. Process of art. Alright, let's go into vertex select mode because we now need to repair the faces that we're missing. So we're going to select those four corners and then hit F to fill in. So we'll try the same thing over here. I actually end up making a face that I realized I did not want. So when I do that, I will actually delete it as well. So that one I did not want. What I'm going to do instead is I'm going to delete that and select a different set of four corners to fill in that area. It's not the left leg that I needed to break up, it was just putting some space in between the left and the right. That's what I really wanted, so that when later on I'd be able to reshape the leg on the left. So I fill in that area. I got one more area left. Make sure you do select all the vertices correctly. And this is something you can take your time with. Make sure everything is perfect. Okay, so that's filled in. Character's got some space between the legs. It's going to look a little bit more natural. Alright, I hope you create some really cool characters. And get ready for part 2 where I show you how to add color.